most part, I think if anyone had an opinion about my veganism, it was distaste for it or annoyance at it, so maybe they'd be excited to know that I was struggling with anything at all. But yeah, no one, for the most part, cared. I was all alone doing it. And so, I really had those moments of disappointment in myself in a vacuum. actually went out of business during COVID. Very sad. And it was like a pizzeria. It may have been Greco-Roman. So it had some Greek things on the menu and some Italian things. And we were all sitting at a table. I remember it was in the middle of the floor. We had not been able to get a booth that night, which I think is often the preference of any family with young children, to not be in like the middle, in like loud, uncomfortable chairs that scoot in and out and all that stuff. Your kids hanging off them like monkey bars. I mean, I was a little too old for that by that point, but still, we were always like a booth family. This is not the point, is it? Okay. So, my point is, it's just really indelible. Like, I really remember this night. And I had ordered chicken noodle soup, and my sister ordered veal. And I had never heard the word before. And I said, "What are you getting? Like, what's veal?" And my dad is very blunt. He likes shock value, and he's also just like very brutally honest. And without skipping a beat, with a mouthful of food, well, I guess bread, because we did not have food at that point, or maybe he was like taking a drink of something. He said, "Baby cow," he said in a really like low, abrupt voice. "Baby cow." Like his Columbo voice. "Baby cow." I don't even think he looked at me. He just was answering for the table. That's just what he's like. And I just blue screened. I was struggling to understand. And I got very upset. I just remember like everything was like clicking, like a supercut, like flashing through my mind. And I know that I had known before that chicken was chicken and all this stuff, but it all like came into hyperfocus. And I was like, I'm done. I'm not eating animals anymore. At that point, I had no like frame of reference. Like, I did not understand why someone would even go vegan. I thought it was enough to just, that a lot of people are confused about this, and I, with no even vegetarian role models, I saw no reason to take it there. I just knew I did not want to eat animals in like the most literal, like child mindset terms. So I said, I'm not eating meat anymore. And my dad said, "Yes, you are." And I was like starting to cry and making a bit of a scene, I think. And he told me that I had to finish my chicken noodle soup, and I did not want to. I was completely put off and very upset, and he said that I had to. And it was just becoming, we were becoming really entrenched. It was becoming a whole thing. And he said, "Finish your soup, and then if you want to not eat meat after that, like eat what you ordered, but after that, whatever, do what you want." So I forced down the bowl of chicken noodle soup, crying the entire time, like very dramatically. And then I was vegetarian for 7 years with no one, like just completely on my own, no friends, and like going through the pressures of school, and it being like it's not that I stopped believing what I'd believed. I just didn't care about anything. Didn't care about myself. Yeah, just a really dark place. And then I came out to California, and I just started reconnecting with myself, healing, and as I healed, that it's pretty funky that someone is trying to control what you put in your body. It's tough with family, right? Because there's a culture within any given family around food. But yeah, at the end of the day, especially when you're an adult, like, and honestly, I wish, even when I was 11, like, I did not like being forced to eat something that was causing me that level of distress. I don't think that was okay or appropriate. I've never had kids, but I wouldn't wish it on the 11-year-olds I know. So yeah, once you get to the point where you start to have autonomy, even as a minor, have more bodily autonomy, I do think it's your right to, if it really comes down to you don't want that thing in your body, which for a lot of vegetarians and vegans, it's truly like, it starts off as like, no, I don't want to put that in my body. That upsets me, you know? Yeah, it's really tricky. For the most part, I kind of do my own thing like I always have, you know, since I was 11. And I don't really try to get into it with people. There is an exception, a memorable exception. I tried to talk to my sister about veganism because, you know, I felt like I knew her really well and we grew up with a lot of the same values, and she's like such an animal lover and was experiencing a lot of guilt around food and had like a really restrictive diet, and like as it was, and you might think, okay, well, like adding veganism to that mix could be disastrous. But you know, we'd tried, like she'd tried, and I'd also like tried to help find paths to healing around food for her, and I just, yeah, I had some insights into like how she saw the world and also like her relationship with food, and I couldn't help but wonder if maybe veganism would have been right for her, doing the typical, the thing of like, that people think that vegans are just doing all the time, but usually I don't, but in this case I was. I'm like trying to encourage someone to maybe go vegan, or at least like look into it. And I suggested she watch the trailer, not even the movie, but the trailer alone is very upsetting, very hard to watch. I suggested she watch the trailer to Earthlings, narrated by Joaquin Phoenix, a documentary that was like the aggregation of 6 years of behind-the-scenes footage, like guerrilla footage, from all the industries that exploit animals, so entertainment, pets, food, fashion, there's another one I'm forgetting, and pharmacological or pharmaceutical, but I think there's a 6th that I'm forgetting. So the trailer is really upsetting, so I was like, I don't think you should start with the movie, but maybe see if you can handle the trailer. And we got like 20 seconds in, and she started sobbing, like whole body just like inconsolable, and her boyfriend got so mad at me, you know, just shut the computer, and I was like, that's enough of that. And so I left it alone, and now she's no longer with him, and she is vegan. She actually went vegan on her own ultimately. Like I had nothing to do with it. She started with, I mean, maybe she had me in mind. You know, when you have a vegan in your life, a vegan with whom you're close, I'm sure that there's some influence there, but she really did do it all on her own. She did was younger and a little more of an all or nothing thinker. So, plus we're our most assertive and or we can be our most assertive and brattiest with family, right? So next up, what are your top 3 favorite hair care brands / items that are vegan? Looking to switch over to some new ones, and I trust your judgment because your hair looks amazing. Thank you very much. I have some work still to do because some days it can be so frizzy. Despite my best efforts to like slap a bunch of oil on it before I get on camera, but some days lately I am pretty happy with it. Some days it does what I want. So I have to imagine that my products are working, and then it's just about whether I use them to greatest advantage. So I like a cure. I think some people, have not had as much success, but I've always had a great experience with a cure. You can get all their products pretty much at like Target. I use their moisturizing shampoo and their lemongrass clarifying shampoo. I like Beauty and Planet. I think they were formerly called Love and Beauty and Planet. I've been using their coconut and mimosa flower conditioner for a long time. Not a long time, but a couple years. And recently I was doing research on the curly girl method because who has never had to use a gun against another human being, or like pulled the trigger and seen, you know, what it did. I'm sorry, I definitely need to put a content warning. But also, he says, if you've never seen someone you love, a friend, you know, a partner, in arms, take a bullet. He thinks that the voices of people, you know, directly impacted should be like shock where your body's like, what the fuck is happening? And then it normalizes. Like, I've gained and lost weight all as a vegan, all with vegan food, just depending on like what in particular I'm eating. So in that way you kind of return to a normal body experience. It's not like a long-term weight loss thing. I really caution against seeing it that way, because there are all kinds of vegan diets, right? So, oh, the other thing, I do experience a lot less food guilt. I didn't even realize how much I had until I went vegan. So there is something that feels really clean. I don't know how to describe it, but like a load off, in my opinion, and I've heard that from other people as well. That there is like a lightening. Your relationship with food changes. It's my personal experience that there was a dissipation, a kind of evaporation of food guilt. That again, I only really noticed it when it was on its way out. I was like, oh, that feels so much better. The last thing I'll say about health, I have a heart condition, nothing major, but I've struggled with pretty intense PVCs. PVCs are very normal, but my experience with PVCs often involves couplet PVCs, or Gemini, something like that. So sometimes I'll have like 2 big PVCs for every normal beat, PVC, beat, PVC, beat, PVC, which can feel really bad, and it does put extra stress on your heart over time. There is a surgery I could do endoscopically, and in the meantime I could be taking beta blockers, but the point is I have had to see a cardiologist over the years since I was diagnosed, and I've just been in the room with a lot of cardiologists and cardiothoracic surgeons, and they do kind of as a rule seem pretty pleased when they hear that you're following a vegan diet, for whatever that's worth. Yeah, they're often like, oh great, good. I was gonna say good. So, anyway, far cry from that one urgent care doctor. But for me, the biggest thing I've noticed is I enjoy food more. There's less of like that guilt, guilt hangover. And it can be difficult to like identify from where that is coming, because our culture is so, shaming around food and has really toxic attitudes towards like bodies, and so it can be confusing. But for me, I did not realize how much food guilt was coming from eating meat until I stopped, and I did not identify as a person with, a lot of food guilt. So I suppose if you're predisposed, like if you're inclined toward veganism, then yes, that will feel really good for you, I think. I've never had an allergy or really dieted, so I feel like restricting at all would be very difficult. I feel like restricting at all would be a very difficult habit to create. Do you find it difficult to maintain or order at restaurants? Yes, yeah, definitely. I totally hear that. So first of all, when it comes to the restaurant question, make sure you get to eat. So if it's a scenario where like doing the vegan thing means you don't get an opportunity to eat, or eat, as much as you need that day or that night, you need to eat. But if it's just a matter of not being able to eat there, or being stuck eating a side of guacamole and waiting until you get home to eat, congratulations, you've made it to vegan level 4. is in support of that. It's not like one crossroad, one fork in the road. It's crossroad after crossroad after crossroad after crossroad. Yeah, it is one of the human diets of greatest resistance. So I do think that it needs to come from a place of positive personal stake. So for example, using that analogy of struggling to be faithful in your relationship, if that's, you know, your kind of monogamy contract, if that's what's understood between you and your partner, and you're struggling with it, the goal is to come to a point when any fresher, less packaged cheese board cheeses at that store. But I do think this is a brand that's, like, it does have a line of products in grocery stores, other grocery stores, more widely available. And while I can't vouch for those products, I am inclined to try them, to give that brand a shot with their more processed or packaged products, because what they're doing at their cheese counter in the Valley is so fucking good. I can't remember the name, but conversation around it. And then there's like emotional work there as well that can be very tedious. Yeah. Yeah. You'd be surprised, like when you say you're vegan, how many people like their first response is, oh, I was vegan. I know all about that. I was vegan for 3 years and it didn't work out. You know, I got so unhealthy or something like that. And it's not that, like I believe them and their experience is totally valid, and it's just so funny because that's like their response to my experience immediately. Like so often with veganism, you can't really bring it up without people too seldom are like, oh, interesting, cool. It's like it becomes very quickly about them, and I'm not trying to make it about them. And clearly, like, it's not even about me. What it's bringing up in them. It's interesting. You become like a walking litmus. Or like people just think they think you want the conversation all the time. That you want to be an educator. And veganism is hard work as it is without needing to be like credentialed in that way. Being able to like cite studies. That's why I really appreciate these questions like across the board are so centering of my experience, and I really appreciate that. I did not get a single like debate me question, and I really like it means a lot. It's fun for me in this way because I don't know, like I can't speak to the ideal human diet. Holy shit. What do I know, you know? So how do I deal with that? Sorry again about this plane. It's a really good question, isn't it? I mean, I think you can deal with that the same way you might deal with someone who tries to, you know, debate you on anything. All those words that are invaluable to an Al-Anon. I don't see it that way, or let's agree to disagree, or that's one way to look at it, you know, like disengagement. It's just so funny, like anytime you're doing something that challenges norms, and how you then have to be like the spokesperson or just be ready to debate people about it. I'm just doing what feels good for me, and I'm just living my life. So I don't know how to be any different, like the way I felt when I was 11 sitting at that table. I don't know, I'm just trying to be happy. Veganism, above all, it makes me happy. It feels good and right for me and my heart and my body. So, do you find that there are many vegan beauty products of the same standard as those that aren't vegan/cruelty-free? Plus, faves if you have any. Perhaps there's been a rise in the last few years, but I still struggle to find vegan and cruelty-free that wears the same. Yes, definitely for me, it's been tough with skincare. And, yeah, sometimes there aren't comparables. I really have struggled to find something. Y'all know that I layer my sunscreen, and I've been loving Supergoop, but I still still really want to use Elta MD in my routine. It's so annoying. Yeah, and there are lots of things like that. This is especially a struggle with like acne treatments and skincare stuff. Just remember that veganism is the commitment to reducing harm and exploitation of animals as far as is possible and practicable. You are best placed to make the decision of where to draw the line for yourself. It's your body. Anyone who tells you anything differently is being ableist and probably also classist. I mean, like, be honest with yourself where you draw that line, of course, and it's going to be an ongoing conversation, but this is very real. The struggle is very real. And it's not just like when people talk about practicable, there's this idea that we're supposed to be so abstemious as vegans, lead not even what PETA thinks. Like, okay, so film, like in Polaroids and in certain cameras, like that a lot of movies are filmed on, in photo booths, any film, especially instant film, but any film that you have to like get developed involves gelatin. There is no film currently in existence, like widely available, right? And compatible with all the existing as for food specifically, I would say don't create a need or want vacuum. Don't just pull everything off the table, all at once, especially if there are things on which you rely dietarily or just emotionally. I would do the Indiana Jones swap out. I would try instead introducing more and more vegan things into your life and seeing what they displace. Instead of thinking of replacement, like you're taking something out and finding something to substitute it, instead, like, pursue vegan joy wherever you can, at whatever table, at whatever crossroad, like every opportunity, and then see what it displaces in your life. See what things you feel ready to let go of without a bunch of, without causing yourself hardship. Yeah, that feels more abundant and less restrictive. I really think if you're already restrictive around food, veganism is going to be at odds with that. Yeah, so if you're thinking of going vegan too, this is not making assumptions about the person asking the question, but just like on that line of thought, if you're thinking of making the switch to veganism, make sure it's happening alongside you healing your relationship with food overall, or even like do that first before going vegan. You don't want to be taking a bunch of stuff out of your diet if there's already a restrictive, stressful energy. Yeah, that's what I would say anyway. Yeah, I don't know how helpful any of that is, but yeah, that's what I'd say. Any vegan food you are skeptical of, definitely. A lot of restaurants they do a bad job with mock meat, imitation meat. I've had some like funky vegan chicken. I mean, it is vegan chicken, but is it? When there are such better versions out there, I'm like, this is not chicken, and they're like, you're right, it's chicken with an apostrophe N, and I'm like, no, this is not chicken with an apostrophe N. I don't know what this is. This is made up. I've never confronted someone over there. Bad mock meat. But yeah, there are some funky ones out there. If you have that experience, let me just assure you that's not representative of what's possible, what's out there. Because I've come across some bad ones myself. Beyond Meat's beef crumble. What the fuck? I don't understand. We had it one night. I love Beyond Meat. I love their ground beef, and I love their patties. I love their sausages. I don't know what happened with the beef crumble. I don't know how it got greenlit, was okayed for production. It's so bad. It tastes like dog food. Yeah, awful. Oh, KFC. I don't understand conversation with animal agriculture and like cruel practices on that level. Like, it is a chicken company, and a big one, and known for being very harmful. So yeah, it's a step in the right direction, but yeah, I don't know if I would ever want any of their products anyway. But oh, lab meats, yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about those, because they still use a sample, right? It's a slippery slope anytime there's anything animal derived involved, you know, so I'm not sure about that. But I would need to learn more about it. Yeah, I'm not sure. I know a lot of vegans who are like, no, I don't want, no, but I'm open to it. Like, I think there are a lot of people for whom that would be a home run and would really reduce their consumption of meat. What are your thoughts on people who keep a vegan diet but not a vegan lifestyle, i.e. they eat vegan foods but don't use vegan products? Which do you live and why? I strive to do the latter. Sorry, this is loud. I'm gonna get more into that when I circle back to that question about strictness. So loud. But yeah, I think of veganism, like I've always seen it defined as not limited to diet, basically across the board, trying to divest from the use, exploitation, and most of all, harm of animals, but like also just like using them on any level, because that ties into exploitation. Anytime you commodify life. So I have a cynical answer, and then I have a more optimistic one. So the cynical answer is that's not, to my understanding anyway, that's not veganism. To just do the diet component, that's a plant-based diet. So I do think that's like a misnomer, because veganism isn't a diet. And I do see the highest amount of recidivism in this category. People who really focus on like what they're eating, but not so much other areas of life. I do see a lot of recidivism personally within that group of people who go vegan for the purported health benefits, or for weight loss, or for some other primarily fundamentally dietary reason. Yeah, so I'm not gonna go up to someone and be like, you aren't what you say you are, you know, you aren't vegan, if they consider themselves vegan. I don't think labels matter so much, so this is just really, like, again, down to my understanding, my personal understanding of veganism. And then on the other hand, thinking more optimistically, I said, if they are doing it for the animals, it's possible that's just how they're starting off, and they're off to a great start, because in my opinion, that's the hardest part. So that's great, they're on their way, you know. Yeah, we make choices around food constantly. So yeah, so maybe they're a vegan in progress, you know. Who am I to judge? I'd need more information. Yeah, maybe they're a vegan in progress and they just haven't made it to their final form, and nor have I, just to be clear. It is a lifelong process. I'm going to get into that in a moment. Yeah, it's a lifelong journey, and what is asked of vegans changes as the world changes, as does like the definition, I would imagine, or like how you break that down behaviorally. But perhaps they have a longer way to go to just cross So, abstaining is a complicated prospect. So yeah, my answer is, I would say, quite strict, and my goal is to be, to follow it as far as it will take me. Of course, I'm taking things a day at a time, but my goal is to be vegan forever. That's how I picture my life. I really do feel like a forever vegan. Sorry, it's noisy again. Oh, fuck, that's good. I always think it's gonna be gross, and then it tastes delicious. Okay, so, but the reason I felt like this was a complicated question and I wanted to spend more time on it is, I think there's another level on which to interpret it. Yeah, I think there's another level on which it can be interpreted within the vegan community. Like, there are things that are objectively not vegan, but then within the vegan community, there are bones of contention. There are areas where vegans disagree with each other. So while I would say that I don't really do much that, like, 10 out of 10 or even 5 out of 10 vegans would classify as essentially what need I have that I would like to see met, by an innovative industry that, more and more seems to be seeing a market, like seeing a value in providing to vegans. For me, I don't want to wear leather, even if it's secondhand. That's something I came to over the years. It's just not something I want on my body. It just makes me sad, as silly as that sounds. I know a lot about leather and how to care for it because my mom is a horse lover, and growing up, one of my chores was to clean and condition her tack. Lots of leather. So I appreciate all the points people make about leather and, what they find so useful about it. But again, it's beside the point for me. It's not an option for me. Okay, I also don't consume first-hand wool or silk first-hand. I mean, I don't buy wool or silk. I'm super interested to know, like, if any of these are surprising to any of you. I never know what people do and don't know about veganism until, like, I'm confronted with it in, like, a Christmas gift mix-up or, some situation, usually with family and friends. So yeah, I don't buy silk, I don't buy wool, in addition to obviously not buying leather or fur. I'm open to secondhand silk and wool. I'm not sure because it hasn't come up for me. I don't really care either way, which probably means I won't buy it, just because if it makes no difference to me, I'd rather err on the side of caution with my practices. Because in theory, you could create more demand for the items by over-shopping them or shopping them out of secondhand supply as well, which would push prospective consumers back toward just buying it outright, This all gets into the question of financial versus ethical veganism, which I will get to in a moment. Bivalvia. I think in theory I'm open to bivalvia or bivalves. So some vegans think it's within the framework of veganism to consume mussels, oysters, scallops, not so much clams, because they also don't have a central nervous system and may indeed be kind of like a meat vegetable. They do have an escape mechanism. They can like wiggle away from you, and the concern there is that there could be pain, because just like when you put your hand on a hot stove burner and you feel pain, and that gives your body signals to evade damage, damage that could take you out of the gene pool, to be very, I don't know, to reduce things to they're like teleological, to like their biological imperatives, or functions. Yeah, there's a close biological relationship or evolutionary relationship between pain and escape mechanisms, right? So when you see an animal that can do that even without a central nervous system, it raises some questions about, like, does it feel pain? I don't eat mussels, scallops, or oysters because it makes no difference to me. I would rather not. I'd rather play it safe. That being said, I do think it's a great alternative if you can healthfully consume those animals and can't go fully vegan and need some sort of animal protein in your diet. I always think of it as kind of my ripcord. When people, like the hypothetical people, scare me sometimes when they're like, industries, those major industries we spoke of earlier that exploit animals. I don't do that. Oh, there's an asterisk. There's an asterisk to this, and I'll get to that in a moment. When I'm doing the flip side, things I'm less strict about, things about which I'm less strict. Yeah, I don't do that with food, not anymore, you know. Again, like, in my early days of veganism, as I was kind of transitioning, I had more moments like that, but now I won't have something if it has even, like, traces of milk in it. That's just what feels right for me. I just don't want those things in my body. Oh, okay, so, and then the next thing to which this question of financial or economic veganism versus ethical veganism, which is kind of a misnomer, because obviously ethics do drive fiscal, well, that's not the word, economic veganism. But, yeah, that's just the two designations as I've heard them, but I guess the idea is that those vegans who won't partake even when there's no financial implication. Yeah, it's the idea in principle as well. So I tend to fall more in that category, and more over time as I really distill, ossify, crystallize, really come into my own kind of, my own personal version, my own experience of veganism. What feels the best and truest, like, to me, what's most in service of ideologically what I want ideologically. So the other question is gifts. Like, can you buy gifts that aren't vegan for people? And no, I don't think you can buy food for anyone else that isn't vegan. horses and loves horseback riding and is vegan. Because I think, like, we gotta trust vegans and we gotta trust each other as vegans. Like, I know that a lot of shit on the internet is fake and for clout and whatever. That's an issue that's germane to the internet. That's an internet issue that toxifies, that manifests across the board. People saying one thing and then, being hypocrites in terms of what they're actually doing behind closed doors. That's not specific to veganism. So in general, setting that aside, I just think this idea that vegans are secretly not truly vegan, it's like, for the most part, I think most vegans, they want to not participate in animal cruelty, in the exploitation and harm of animals, and I think that drives them more than any posturing or social pressure or whatever. I mean, I don't know. I can only speak for myself, but I think we've got to trust vegans that that's what they want. So, choice by choice, they're constantly assessing and reassessing to get closer to that goal. So the idea that vegans are secretly, like, not vegan, I think it's hard, and I think, like, it's a journey. But I think for the most part, most vegans, like, they're in it to win it. Like, that's what they want, regardless of what you think. And it's just a question of how they make it happen, how they get there, and we should trust them to drive their own car, Okay, so now we get to the part of the list. Speaking of like, trusting vegans to figure these things out for themselves. Now we get to the part of the list where I tell you all the ways I think I'm less strict, a little more lenient. At least, like, as I navigate the world as it exists, because, like, all these things are things where, like, I think of it more as, like, I'm doing my best and not like I'd ever defend it as, like, the best, my most vegan self, So firstly, I do treat toiletries with that kind of waste not, want not attitude for the most part. Like, I think they're all technically vegan, but a good number of toiletries that I already have purchased, even as recently as within the last few years. Obviously, like, things that have not yet expired, I will use them. Yeah, again, they are technically vegan, but they're not cruelty free, and I do think that runs contrary to the spirit of veganism, and I would like to root that out of my life as quickly as possible and practicable. But yeah, if it's something I already have or am gifted, I will try to use it. Again, yeah, especially if they're technically vegan but not fully cruelty free. And then I write in my notes, in most cases these can't be given away. agreed that we would go and then make a donation towards like a farm sanctuary. I think we did the farm sanctuary out in Acton, so that was a snafu moment in my veganism. I think it would have like hurt her. I mean, she's, you know, super tough and she can handle it, but like I just didn't want to hurt her around that, because I know it would have really been at odds with how she saw the situation and how she saw this institution. And I just again resolved to handle it differently in the future. Maybe have like something else lined up that I'm like, oh, but I really want to do this instead, you know. Try to do it as tactfully as I can, because it means a lot to her, you know. And I do understand that some zoos do a good job with conservation, rehabilitation. It's just, it always feels like a slippery slope if you're profiting off, come look, see the animals, you know. Like when you visit the farm sanctuary, they will give you a spiel on veganism and ask if you want to come volunteer and help take care of the animals. Like it's very much, it just has a different vibe than something a little more commercial. And you know, because they're all like rescued farm animals, you know, those animals, like they're domesticated, they couldn't exist in the wild, but like in these museums, you're like, that's a, you know, they trapped that wolf and brought it here, you know. And case by case, maybe it differs, I don't know. But I think we as a society are learning more and more about the grim realities of zoos and aquariums and things like that, and beginning to really reckon with those realities, and that makes me happy. Okay, so as for the question of horseback riding, I think I would be open to riding a horse for a film, and that might sound very strange because I would like be, you know, making money off it, and also that exists at the intersection in terms of the horse trainers of the pet industry and the entertainment industry, right? It's just that it comes up a lot in scripts, you know, as it does in the stories of real human lives, you know. It's been a big part of human culture historically, and it's much harder to fake, you know. Unlike eating some mutton on Game of Thrones, which Peter Dinklage was able to do as a vegan, because that's much easier to fake aesthetically, imagistically, than like being on a horse, you know. I do think that you stand to lose out on a lot of roles if you draw that line. If I did do that, this is all of course hypothetical, but if I did do that, I'd be very interested to know how the horses were cared for and where they came from and what would happen to them once they retired and that sort of thing. Oh, obviously I don't like horse racing. I don't do either. I would never go to a horse race. So yeah, I obviously want to eschew both industries, both the pet industry and the animal entertainment industry as much as possible. But yeah, I do see the merit in the inclusion of horses in visual storytelling. I do see the merit of that, whereas in my personal life I have no need or want of it, and therefore no real way to justify it, right? So yeah, so that's still something I need to think about, and I would probably look to the other vegan actors for insight, for guidance. So the last bone of contention, this is actually a big one and I don't think it's talked about enough, but the gray area. So living in a world so full of commodification, use, exploitation, and harm of animals on every level, there's a lot of gray area. And by that I don't even mean like it could be vegan or not vegan. I mean more it's not well lit, not well illuminated in terms of just like being able to make an informed decision. So I think vegans tend to fall in two camps. There are vegans who will divest from, avoid, eschew animal products, anything that involved so much by just starting with and concerning yourself first and foremost with those things that clearly aren't vegan. You know, just cutting those out of your life will already be a lot of work, a lot of time and energy and abstinence. Yeah, I don't worry myself too much if my veganism isn't good enough for those vegans who do the admirable thing of limiting themselves 100% in their consumption to things that are certified, you know, certified vegan, which is across the board a more expensive prospect because those companies have to go through certain steps. They have to pay for and meet certain standards for licensure. They may not be able to rent the same facilities, things like that. That's why the idea of things being accidentally vegan is pretty important at this point in time as we continue to try to reform the world to, if not be wholly vegan, then at least be more hospitable to vegans, more vegan friendly. It's important to, I think, to let people know that that is plenty. And I'm not so worried, again, what other people think of my veganism because it's for me. And if everyone denounced me as a vegan tomorrow and like the jig was up, I wouldn't change anything. I would act exactly the same because it's not about the label for me. And I think anytime you're trying to resist or divest from a system of injustice or a system where injustice is occurring at every level. For example, like ableism is happening at every level of our society. It's baked into our society at every level. Institutional racism is baked in at every level. So you're gonna come up against, like, you're gonna come to more and more crossroads and more frequently moments of choice in terms of divestment or complicity, and sometimes you're gonna miss a turn, or sometimes like the path isn't even clearly labeled. You know, it's murky. You don't even know which way to go, and you make the best choice you can. And I just think that the moment you let go of the label, like, it's not like one day you're like, I'm a vegan, and then the work is done. It's about making that choice again and again as you come to those crossroads. I think that's what veganism is. It's crossroad by crossroad, taking the vegan path, and hoping that by doing so, it'll be better worn, better lit, better marked for those who walk it after you. Like the example I gave of anti-racism, they're nothing alike except for that they are, again, like, everywhere. Like, it's happening everywhere all the time. And it's so complicated, and so many things have implications you wouldn't necessarily know without digging deeper. So, for example, doing anti-racist work, it's not about trying to prove that you aren't racist. In fact, you should just, like, forget all about that. It's about what you do and what you don't do. Like, my friend said something really interesting. She was like, it's so weird we don't say I'm doing yoga when we're not. Maybe you say that you practice yoga, I suppose, but, like, just, I'm not really vegan in a vacuum. I'm a vegan at the table. I'm a vegan at, you know, the checkout. I'm a vegan. It's defined by what I'm resisting and what I'm trying to, from what I'm trying to divest. Twix bars with that cookie layer. So good. So I'm gonna treat myself to this tonight for getting this video done because I was definitely intimidated. Also, we have a sponsor. Not really, I'm joking. If you can stand just a little more vegan content. This is my Thanksgiving turkey from 2021. Serena. Serena was saved from slaughter, and I think she has the most gorgeous eyes. So sweet. Her colors, so gorgeous. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, thank you so much. And again, I do apologize if I offended you with this video. I totally understand where vegans are coming from who are like kind of unapologetically assertive. I just don't think that's the best way about it. So as much as I think it's great to challenge each other on important issues like this, I do apologize if it caused you discomfort, because I don't know for a fact that there wasn't a way I could have gone about it that was better. I'm not sure of that, so I can't just say that it was like the substance of what I said 100% that caused you